Hey everybody, I hope you're all doing well. So I am going to hop on here really quickly and give a very short version of my testimony. Um, I've been trying and trying to make videos. I've tried to give what I guess would just be like a version of my testimony, and I've realized that there's so much to get into. Like for those of you that have had a lot happen, I guess I don't know. God just maybe doesn't want me to get into all the details because every time I try to do that, it doesn't work. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Okay. Um, so I was raised in a I don't know, I was going to say a southern town. Like it's in the Midwest, in the southern part of Illinois. I'll just say that in the late 70s to a fairly, a happy home. My dad was a small business owner. By the time I was born, he was, I think, starting to gain some traction. All this hard work was starting to pay off, and so things were cozy like my whole life. And um, but I had two siblings, and they were both, I think one was 10 and one was 11 years older than myself. So there was a pretty big age gap. And just growing up, uh, I remember feeling just very lonely and isolated, which would, I think, sort of come into play as I got older, especially as I've been through this last, this most recent phase of my life, which is like an isolation phase. I think that was getting me ready for it. So, I don't want it to sound like yes, I've had moments of difficulty like reflecting on how lonely I felt sitting in my room as a child. But at the same time, like I had plenty of toys, I had everything that a child could want. It wasn't like I had to worry about when my next meal was going to come or like any of that stuff, like any of the stuff, that so many children have to go through. So, um, I just want to be really clear about certain things. And at that point in time, I had an imaginary friend, and I don't want to give the name out there, but it was a really bizarre name. Like I've never heard this name anywhere, um, and I don't really remember a whole lot about what that friendship was like. I mean, I must have been like 4 or 5 years old. I could ask my mom, but I'm not even sure if she would remember at what point in time did this imaginary friend sort of appear and when did they disappear. And, you know, I have my different theories, about who and what that could have been. And honestly, because it's such a vague memory, um, it's hard for me to say. But what I do know is that as I got older, especially quite a bit older, and I would talk to my friends, I was missing a lot of memories. Um, and I've 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 watched so many videos of so many people's testimonies, and having missing memories, missing time is a fairly common thing. So don't think that it isn't. Don't think that your childhood friend who doesn't remember certain things is weird. This I think is a spiritual thing because there are things that I should have remembered um, before I got into substances. And I think I thought for the longest time, well, maybe it's because I started smoking weed when I was like 16. Maybe that's what sort of erased my younger memories. But in all honesty, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So, I grew up, um, like I said, with an imaginary friend. He went away, in school. I think I always felt kind of just weird in school, but my family had enough money that it wasn't an issue, if that makes sense. I was sort of able, to buy my way into pretty much, whatever, whoever I wanted to hang out with. Like, so I'll just tell you this really quickly. So in seventh grade, I literally failed seventh grade the first time I went through it. Not because I'm unintelligent. It's because I really just couldn't be bothered with school. Um, and the same thing even kind of happened with church. Like, by the time I was, I don't know what age, like maybe 12 or so, um, I had an extra set of car keys to my dad's Cadillac, and I would pretend to go into church. And once they were in the door where they would go to Sunday school, I would just turn around and go back out to the car and listen to rap music. And I remember one time I blew my dad's speaker out, and he probably had his theories as to why that occurred. Um, but this was just kind of my rebellious nature that I've had, so much of my life. Like, I just felt like certain things, and I realize now, like, just in my spirit, that going to school was really, it just really bothered me. There were some days I just wanted to sleep in. We were growing as children, and I just wanted to rest. And I think there's other things that were going on in school that definitely got worse after I went to school. Um, but still, nonetheless, like, things that I just felt like things bothered me, and I didn't know how to express them, um, to people properly. Like, how do you tell anyone in your small town that, going to, like, having to wake up every Sunday and go to church is a total bummer, and that, you don't feel like you're learning anything. I don't know, it's so weird. Like, the whole thing just seems so blurry to me. So much of my younger years, which is, again, it's strange to me because I wasn't on any prescription medications or anything. Um, Standard American diet growing up, so maybe that had something to do with it. McDonald's and microwave dinners and Coca Cola and just all the crap. I would say out of all of the kids I went to school with, I probably had like a higher end diet, but it was still, from what we're learning about food, still terrible. But still, nonetheless, like, a lot of my other friends had their memories, so like there was something going on this whole time. And um, I ended up getting kicked out of high school a couple of different times. The first time was when I was a freshman. I think I was just kind of unruly. Like, the teachers just didn't like me, so my parents sent me to a Christian school for like a year and a half. Came back to normal high school, and I think it was in the beginning of my senior year. I went through the lunch line. I had just a tiny bit of marijuana in my wallet, and for some reason the lunch lady went through my entire wallet, so I got expelled because she found pot. And it was just, my life has just been like one thing after another. um I think I've had like two or three different DUIs in my lifetime. Like I said, I started smoking pot really early on. I mean, it's just been one thing after another. And it in my life, it felt like it was only when I was in relationships that I behaved myself. Because after I got kicked out of high school for weed, I started dating this girl. And or maybe we started dating before I got kicked out. No, I think I see, this is what I'm talking about. Like, with my memories, it's weird. I should remember this very well. It was a big point in my life, but it just, so it's weird. It's like, did I just not care at all, and that's why I don't even bother to remember it, or is it so traumatic that I don't remember it, or is there some sort of spiritual oppression going on? Was it all three? Like, who knows? But these videos are for people that have been through similar things. Okay, um, so I started dating this girl, and I'm pretty sure we started dating like after I got kicked out, which is just weird to me because I remember having a class with her in high school, but I think her dad was a state police officer, like very high up state police officer. Like he was actually, well, there's things I shouldn't say, but he was very high up. Even though he's retired now, I just don't want to put his name out there. So I'll just say he was in the drug enforcement unit. So for me to get kicked out of high school for weed, and they definitely knew about it. Like his son was my age, so and their daughter was a couple of years younger than me, so they definitely knew. And and I think just kind of looking back, that was a relationship that God just sort of he interjected because there's really no way they should have let me date her. Um, he sort of interjected for me and allowed me to have that relationship with her for about 2.5 or 3 years. Um, and then one day it ended suddenly, and again I don't remember exactly how it happened. But I want to mention these things because I feel like they're pretty big milestones in my life, and that's what's hard is like when you have so many things that happen. Giving a testimony, it's just kind of hard. Um, so we ended up breaking up, and that for me really sent me kind of over the edge. Like I was really interested in psychedelics, um, acid and mushrooms and all of it, drinking and smoking weed. I mean, smoking weed all day, every day was the thing, and just sitting in my room channeling music. And I say channeling because that's literally what I was doing. I was channeling music from demons, from spirits. And if you listen to my music, you wouldn't, it might not be like what you think. I think people think when people are channeling demons, they're doing like heavy metal or like highly satanic, highly evil things, and it wasn't that at all. Um, you know, it was weird and dark in its own kind of like emo way, I guess. I mean, I was from the Kurt Cobain era, um, which people call that alternative grunge or whatever. Like that doesn't even matter. Those are just labels that people give things. But um, so yeah, I used to just sit in my room for hours and smoke weed and play guitar and record music. And my dad got me this little like 4-track recorder shortly after I started playing guitar, and I started playing when I was like 18. So again, this is like that whole time era, like getting kicked out of school, having to go to an alternative school. Like this is that timeline. Um, and Man, I went so off the deep end. Um, and so my about 2.5 years, 3 years into like not dating anybody, still trying to get over my ex girlfriend, my best friend from childhood. He grew up right next to me, and he was like a year older. So like when I say best friend, I had like 2 or 3 guys that I hung out with a lot when I was younger, and he was one of them. He came back from college and he was a football player, and just one of those people that is just magnetic and makes friends everywhere he goes because he's a huge guy, he's funny, he's charismatic, he's just he's got like the whole package that somebody needs to uh, be a great person to know if you ever need anything. And so when he came back, he was coming back with ecstasy, and he had steroids. And I mean, I went through this phase where I was like taking steroids, and the ecstasy didn't come until a little bit after that. But I bring this up because when I met my ex-wife, we were working at this little steakhouse here in town, and she was a hostess. I was a cook. I'd been there for like 3 years, and oh my gosh, I was so pumped up on like really high end, very strong steroids, and I was getting ready to go to culinary school, and I ended up, hooking up with her, and we were doing ecstasy every weekend together, and completely just fell head over heels for this girl. And when I was getting ready to leave, I was just like, I don't, something within me was like, you shouldn't do this. Um, This is a mistake. And but I did, because she like started crying when I was trying to talk to her about it. I was trying to tell her like I just don't think, guys, like there's like so much to this story. Like she's from California. Her family moved here when she was like in seventh or eighth grade. So like me going to culinary school, I was gonna go out in Arizona was like a huge thing for her. It was kind of like returning back to California or the West Coast. I mean, guys, there's like so much to this story. So I apologize if there's certain areas where I go into more detail and then I catch myself and go, okay, that's just too much detail. We don't need that right now. So we ended up like having this long term relationship. I was going to culinary school, sending her marijuana back here because I could buy it really cheap out there. I would send it back. She would sell it, send me the money. I'd get a plane ticket, fly home to see her. I mean, guys, it was so crazy. My life has been so crazy. Um, like the first couple of months I was there, and I'm just gonna go and tell a couple of these stories because it the magnitude of how crazy my life has been is, to me at least, it's pretty insane. Like I went down to Mexico with a guy that was in my class, and we got Valiums and Percocets and like all kinds of things. And being the stupid kids that we were, because we were like 23, 24, we decided to take a Valium or two and then drive back. And I literally ended up falling asleep while I was driving the car down whatever that is, the 10 or whatever it is that goes from like Tucson to Phoenix. Fell asleep and lied to the cops, told them, somebody ran us off the road, and still had to go spend the night in jail. My brother came and got me. I got him to take me to the impound where my car was so I could get my pills. I had to jump over the fence, running into my car because my car had the T-tops out. I had a 96 Camaro RS. It was red, very nice, leather seats, had the T-tops out, jumped over the top, through the T-tops, got all my pills. They were scattered all over the place. Like we must have had a pretty crazy impact because like, or maybe the cops just kind of like went through everything. I have no idea, guys. Went through, got a bunch of my pills, hopped out, and as I was coming back to the fence, my brother's like, "Dude, you need to run!" And it's like that movie Stand by Me, where literally the guard the guard dog from the junkyard is like running at me, and almost gets me. I scale the fence. It's just when I think about my life, like and how many close like calls and encounters, like literally encounters with entities and things that I'll get into either a little bit in this video or in other videos. It's just been a crazy life, you know. And I think having a rebellious spirit, I just want to say, like, I told you I was rebellious when I was young. I think, in some ways maybe that brought on a lot of this. Um so anyways, my ex-wife now, ends up coming out to Arizona, and um first she went to go live with her dad for a few months until she turned 18. See, this whole thing is just so terrible. I was like 23, she was 17. So she had to go live with her dad for a while. Then once she was 18, she came and lived with me, and she started working for In-N-Out Burger, and I was the chef, and I was making crappy pay. She had a good job. Like that's a good paying job. That's a great company. Um, and we just like I have to say this. Like I have to just get these things out here. We had a great relationship, but things got weird really early on, and I didn't mention this earlier because I forgot. But when I was staying at my brother's and I was going to culinary school, I had a dream that she was like messing around with some guy back home, and I remember it really freaked me out. I remember asking her about it, and of course she was like no, and there were two other times. Once she moved in with me, like one time we went to a party, and we were in this party that was like 30 minutes from where we lived, and some random guy was like, "Hey, she's cheating on you," and it was really weird. And I was like, "This is so crazy. She just moved here like a few months ago, and we're at a party like way down south. Like Phoenix is a huge place." I was like, "There's no way this guy has ever seen her with some other dude." And then I was working with this girl who was dating a mutual friend of ours, and she's like, she's cheating on you. She actually said it while we were all hanging out together one night. It was crazy, you guys. And that was 3 times. I had 3 different warnings, and I chose not to listen to any of them. And it ended up costing me dearly. Like, my whole life has just costed me so dearly. Um, but the decision to stay with this person would end up becoming, you know, and I'm not blaming everything on her. Like, so much of this is my own. It's my own doing. It's my own generational curse. Like, I think that's a big part of it too. Like, it's different things. Okay. And again, like I said, I had warnings. I was given a fair warning 3 different times, and the three will come into play here in a little bit when I get into something else that got really deep and demonic in my life. So um, I'm gonna try to fast forward through our lives together in Phoenix, because this is like a 17-year, 16-year period. Um, and so we're out there. I end up finding out for sure that she's having an affair, and I still stayed with her. Like, I can't believe it, but one of our good friends like came over one night and told me, and I still to this day don't know why he told me, but he did. And guys, like, I just want to say that I don't care how much you love somebody and how great they are, because this person was so fantastic. Like, when you're around them and they wanted you to, like, when you hear people talk about like a narcissistic mask, like, that thing is no joke. They know it's a demonic thing, guys. They know how to mirror yourself back to you. And that's how they get you, and they draw you in, and they know exactly what you like. And it's weird. It's like, I've learned since we've separated that there are demons that are communicating with her, letting her know when I am doing certain things. Like, even to this day, 5 years after we're broken up, she still will text me, like, when I'm in the middle of, renouncing our relationship or making one of these videos. That's happened a few times. And so just know that, like, it gets really deep. And there are people who dealt with overt narcissists. And I've got a story at some other point in time about a woman that I was talking to last year. It was so obviously an overt narcissist, and I picked up on it right away. Thank God I picked up on it right away, because that would have been a complete nightmare to be in a relationship with this woman. But then you have covert narcissism, and my ex was an excellent covert narcissist. Yes, I ended up she got told on, and this was probably like 2.5, maybe 3 years into our relationship. I ended up finding out um, that she's, like, literally having an affair. And the thing is that within about the first 6 months of us living together, she was messing around with our neighbor who was a lesbian. So, like, guys, like, you just have to understand, like, there was all these things, excuse me, there was all these things happening. There was so much sexual immorality, and this is not about me putting her on blast, because I ended up becoming extremely sexually immoral myself over time. I was already kind of like of a promiscuous mindset. Like, I didn't want to just go out and sleep with everybody. Like, I was more of an imaginative person. Like, I could imagine things a lot more easily than I could actually do them. My imagination is crazy, and that's, the Bible warns us about our imagination. So I want to throw that out there. If you're that type of person that, you know, you think it's okay to just imagine yourself with other people, like, it's not okay. Um, but the spiritual, I don't even know what you would call it, like, implications of her being so promiscuous. And once we moved back to Illinois, I was trying to kind of like have therapy for us, and and work through everything. And she ended up telling me a lot of stuff. And I ended up telling her the things that I had done too, because in my own mind, I thought, you know, because there would be times where I would just have this heavy feeling like, man, I feel like she's cheating again. And so I would go and cheat. And it was just, and it was never, guys, it was never fulfilling. Every time I cheated on her, I just felt terrible. And, I realize now looking back that I wasn't even supposed to be in that relationship, which is a really, when you have a child with someone, that's a really hard thing to say. But you know, I feel like God, for whatever reason, like eventually all of this is going to play out, and I will have learned the lessons that I needed to learn so that I can do what I'm supposed to do, and that, even though I was given warnings, I was still meant to go through all of this so that I could warn people later on. I could tell people, like I'm telling you right now, this is what happened to me, and this is what is going to happen to you unless you turn back. Okay, so that's what this is all about. It's not about me being a jerk and you know telling all of her secrets. Like we all have we all have things that we do, and if people think that the PORN industry isn't like a massive thing right now and isn't doing massive damage, if you think that you're able to just go and do that and there's no implications, you're so wrong. And I think that's, because I understand now how big that industry is. Um, like 90% of men and 60% of women are like watching that content. It gives me more, I don't know, like peace of mind about how bad she and I both were. It's not just her, it's me and her. And by the way, like I grew up in a Christian household. I had to go to church every Sunday, and she was not raised in that way, and we weren't married, and so these things, they just, these things are in place, like when God wants people to not be unequally yoked, or if it's so important to like get married. And we would think of so many of these things as being old fashioned, but we have been removed so far from deeply spiritual things. And that is why the world is the way that it is. Okay, so I just want to say that, like, it may sound like I'm really coming down hard on her, but guys, I've only recently began to forgive myself for the things that I've done. Um, so it's not me just being mean towards her. Um, this whole thing is like a godly process that, you know, he knew was going to happen, probably, I'm sure when he made both of us, and our son, you know. So, um, so fast forward, I'm a chef. She ends up becoming a store manager at In-N-Out Burger. She's making over $100,000 a year. I'm making like $55,000 a year, I think, as a chef at a private country club. Life is great. We end up having our son in 2012, and that's when things really got crazy. Um, just as a little weird bonus, like the house that we moved into right before he was born, our address was 6667. And I remember thinking, like, that's kind of creepy, because I'd heard of like 666, but I was like, that's kind of creepy, but I didn't, again, didn't listen to that intuition. I should have. And I'm not, guys, again, I'm not like blaming the house that we moved into for everything that's getting ready to, that I'm getting ready to tell you about. But it's just little things like that. It's little things like, God is always trying to get our attention. And a lot of times, like, especially maybe when we're young or we just haven't spiritually developed, we haven't gone through enough stuff, yet, um, that we're just unaware, and we can't hear his voice. And so our son was born in 2012. We had just moved into that house, like maybe, I don't know, maybe a year before he was born. Because I think we found out that she was pregnant like shortly after we moved into that place. And, shortly after he was born, I started having major back issues. Ended up having a terrible, like, the disc was so badly herniated that it fractured off. Ended up getting on some pretty strong, like Percocets, for any of you that know what opiates are, like the different types of pain medication. It was Percocets, and being a chef and being on my feet for like 12, 14 hours a day, guys, like I ended up, because being a chef, like there were always people that I seemed to work with that were like, hey man, you know, do you know where to get any of this? Or, hey, do you ever need any of that? And of course, that's what happened. And I started to end up dabbling in stronger Percocets, because the pain management people were only going to give me like so much. And, it's like, it ended up spiraling out of control, and heroin ended up coming into play. And then one night, the guy that showed up to give us some heroin, he was good friends with my wife. He used to work for her, brought some meth, and that is when all hell literally broke loose. Like things just, once the meth was introduced, it was game over. It was game over. Um, I mean, heroin is bad enough, but meth is like, I don't know. It's like you open up every portal that's possible to open to demons and to literally hell. Like as much hell as can kind of happen here on Earth, um, through a substance like meth is terrible. So I ended up, gosh, just like so much happened. I ended up getting let go from my job, um, which I had been there for 10 years. We also, the house that we were renting, we got a notice before I got let go. We got a notice that they were going to be uh, selling that house. And I got this notice like right before I got fired. Like so many things were happening all successively. And then we moved into a house very close by, and something happened with the payment. Like I don't even know, I was in such a bad place at that point. But we were only at that house for like 6 months, and all of a sudden, like the sheriff's like stopped by and like, you've got to leave, that you haven't given your rent for this month or whatever. Guys, I mean, it was terrible. Me and my son and my cat and my dog had to leave Arizona like in a hurry because we were so fighting. And guys, remember, my wife is still making like $120,000 a year at this point. This is how bad things had gotten. We end up having to leave Arizona, um, in like drop of a hat, because we didn't have enough money for a hotel. We didn't. Our credit was, everything was really screwed up because of this company. And I ended up finding out later on that this company was doing this to a lot of people. They were taking people's down payments, their deposits, and everything, renting out their house for a fairly short period of time, and then saying that like they didn't get their payment or whatever, and then just like keeping all of their deposits. Like it was a really shady thing, and I'm not saying like it was the company's fault completely. Like I may have been a little bit late, but even when I tried to fix it, they were like, no, they wouldn't let me come down and give them a check for the rent. It was crazy. It was crazy. So and we weren't even that late on the payment. I want to say it was like the third day of the month. If the payment was supposed to be made on the 31st of the month before, it was like the third day of the next month, or maybe the fifth or whatever it is. Like, all I remember is that everything happened in a very short period of time, and there was nothing that I could do to change these people's minds to let us stay. And so it was literally like God was kicking us out of Arizona. And my wife ended up staying behind and staying with a mutual friend, and working for like a month and a half. And guys, I mean, there was just so much going on. Like towards the end, she would leave at like 6 in the morning and not come home until like 10 o'clock at night. And she would try to tell me that, oh no, she was really working and that she was needed there. I mean, it was all like everything was collapsing. I was having a hard time getting my son to school. His teachers were worried about him. I mean, guys, it's a terrible memory. I hate thinking about it, but I I feel like God wants me to share with you guys. Like, this is what happened. God will tear down your life, He will break it all apart. He will uproot you from a situation. And we ended up moving back. And the crazy thing is, too, about this is my dad had been diagnosed with liver failure, like liver cancer. And, this was kind of what started a lot of my massive down spiral. And there's so much to go into. Like, I forgot to mention this point, but, you know, my parents would come out and help take care of our son. They would live with us for like 6 months out of the year. And that would take so much stress off of me because I was pretty much responsible for taking him to daycare every day and picking him up on time. Um, and we weren't having any luck with any of the daycares that stayed open late. So I was having to, oh my gosh, guys, I was having to leave work sometimes, go get him, take him out to her sister's house and drop him off, go back to my work, then go back to her sister's, go home. I mean, it was just like my life was so crazy. My dad was dying. They weren't going to be able to come out anymore. Like, by the time I came back to Illinois, I was so completely fried. Like, if you've never experienced total burnout, I mean, I'm talking total burnout. It doesn't matter, like, how much willpower you have. Like, I'm talking total burnout. And that's what I was experiencing. And so, we're back here. My father passes away a couple months after being back. And just so many traumatic things happened in such a short period of time. Like, I got clean, we got clean. A couple months after being back here, we were good to go. I think it was like over Christmas we detoxed, and we made it from like, late December till I think it was like that summer. All of a sudden, one day she comes home and her sister's boyfriend had given her some meth. And I remember, like, it was a simultaneous feeling. It was two different feelings. It was part of me that was like, this is a terrible idea. I did not come back here to do drugs. Like, we came back here to be sober. But then there's that other part that's like, well, come on, man. It's just like a little tiny piece. Just have fun for a day, and you'll be good. And that decision to go along with that ruined everything. She ended up running off. She ended up literally stealing that guy from her sister. And her sister and this guy had been together for like 10 years, but her sister wasn't into meth. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, like, the way I see it is, if that's the life that she wanted to choose, if she wanted to leave, you know, me and our son and go and do meth with her sister's boyfriend, then, that's just God's way of finally getting her out of my life. And, a lot of things happened later on. I mean, there was so much drama, like, through the court system. Like, she filed for divorce and got and lawyered up, and and this was the week before COVID, guys. So we literally split up the week before lockdowns happened. It was terrible. It was so terrible. She just kind of left, me and my mom to raise our son, and she went off and partied. And, I will say God sort of kept her in line, like, enough to where it could have been worse. Like, I've known people that have had addicts as, wives or whatever, and they have children. These people are just like as terrible can be. And, yes, she did, smear campaign me, and she did drag me through the mud with lawyers. And I mean, it went on for like over 2 years. Um, Actually, even more than that, because it took 2 years just to get divorced. And then after I thought everything was settled, like 6 months into it, she was paying child support. She got so mad about paying child support, that she took me back to court. And I just got to a point where I was already completely, I was drained by the time I came back here. But by the time all the court stuff came through, like, I was done, and I was looking into like new age, spirituality. I got really big into like hypnosis and the idea that people can heal much faster through hypnosis than they can, through regular means. And so I got so deep into it. I was certified in like three different types of hypnosis. Um, which, like so many things, and I'll talk about all this stuff later on, it initially was amazing. Like I thought I had really found the thing that was going to help me, but it ended up being like the biggest spiritual downfall. I ended up getting into like, tarot cards and occultism and, the Golden Dawn, magical system. I mean, guys, I was studying, astrology and so many things. I'll get into all of that at some other point, but just when I thought that I couldn't be more spiritually damaged or I couldn't be more exhausted, like I got really sick about 9 months into practicing magic. So sick. I went down to Florida with my son. A crown that I'd had placed on my tooth fell out. I believe I got some ocean water in there, and the tooth became super infected. Like they couldn't save it, they had to pull it. And just this absolute nightmare of nothing but terrible health issues ensued after that. And it was like December of last year, after many months of being super sick and realizing that it was a spiritual thing that was happening to me. Um, and it had been happening to me. Like I had had a feeling for a long time that she was doing witchcraft on me. And there's a lot of evidence to support that. It's not just me making things up and being paranoid. Like, she literally has like Lilith posters and a Baphomet poster, or at least she used to have one in her apartment. And just, as above, so below, like witch hands pointing up and down. Like there's things in there that confirm that there's just, whether she's doing things intentionally towards me or if it's just like a, because we were together so long, like, and she's devolved into such a dark person, or at least did for quite some time, that it spiritually affected me, you know. Um, and so, anyways, the moral of this whole story is I gave myself to Christ last December, and it's been such a fascinating journey to finally read the whole Bible for myself and to have a good prayer life and to, you know, still stumble and fall. Like earlier this year, like just a few months ago, I've been taking kratom for for quite a long time, and I've been trying to get off, like trying to figure out how to get off, because I feel like that's been keeping me sick, like spiritually. Yes, I was doing things, and I believe that that made me sick, but I also believe that kratom has been something that was keeping me sick. And so I started looking into extracts, and I got into something called 7O. And if you guys don't know, it's a crazy, please, like, don't ever, ever, ever use this stuff. It's incredibly spiritually damaging. I went through quite, I don't even know, like maybe 6 weeks of just after quitting it, like feeling so spiritually dark and just having a really hard time coming out of a bad decision to, to take that stuff on and off for a couple of months. So, this year has been a battle. But it's been the probably the best year that I've had in a very long time. So, um, that is my testimony in a nutshell, and I I hope I end up posting it. I really do. It's hard for me to post these because there's so much to go into. Um, and it's one of those things that you want to show people like how terrible it's been so they can understand, so they can learn from your mistakes, and you can help them understand that, God and Christ, they are the only way. So anyways, everybody, love you all, and I hope you are going into the new year a new person. All right, talk to you soon.